So from the top, we've got EWBSX is presenting via us another episode of Simple and Hard, episode 3, um, about philosophy. And the reason I wanted to bring philosophy to the table is because I was just thinking about it today. And so the dudes, as you know, Simple and Hard is all about the simple taking on the hard questions. And some of us here are going to be playing the role of simpletons. I won't say who. And some of us here are going to be playing the role of the hard ones who know some facts and logic and can use it and wield it against us or for us, really, for us. And so, philosophy, it's a big topic. Most of the time, when I think about philosophy, it's something that's in your head. It's something that you're gaming through. It's a system where you can kind of make sense of things. That's my best take. But in practical daily life for the regular, average, everyday chud, it ends up being something that you kind of work through, maybe if you're trying to study it. But most of the time, you're just in the shower by yourself having hypothetical conversations with people that aren't real. Maybe it's a conversation you've had in the past and you're trying to game through it and say the right thing, like, oh, if only I had said this thing. Or it's a conversation you haven't had yet that you will probably never have, and you're talking with a certain opponent in mind and you're trying to like poke holes in their thing and anticipate what they would say. Um, that's fine, I guess. It's probably makes you more of an insane person, but it's normal at the very least. So I wanted to really tackle this because I was thinking a lot about it. I was thinking about how can we practically apply philosophy in day-to-day life rather than just being a theory cell, as it were, and just having all of these uh, systems where logic works, but it's all up here in your head and for yourself.
Well, it's
Sound like we
philosophy
can tackle
just
that?
logic, and I'm gonna yield. I just want to draw. I just want to if I could if I could set someone up. I think there's a distinction that needs to be made between just simple logic and rhetoric and I don't know, debate and whatnot, and philosophy per se, even if it has a place in philosophy. That's all I got for the moment.
You're making a distinction between logic and philosophy itself.
Or what Colin was saying about like if a person's philosophizing combatively in their imagination in the shower, they might be arguing about philosophy, but I just wanted to pause before we synonymize the two because just like arguing logic, this, therefore this, I think is far too limited in scope for what like a proper definition of philosophy as a discipline actually is. And I know that the
Logic
boys on the stream have some thoughts about this.
logic is a tool in the philosopher's repertoire by which he comes to truth. So it's not a whole encompassing or even the totality of the philosophy project, but it is a necessary tool that you would use in order to weigh the mechanisms by which you come to truth.
So what is philosophy
That's what I was
after?
gonna say. Would it be appropriate? Would it be fair to say that philosophy is a tool in and of itself? Is philosophy a tool?
Yes, philosophy is a tool, but at the same time, it can also be an all-encompassing view if you're a midway.
Okay.
Tell us more. I gotta know.
Yeah,
I was really trying to
what's a
go.
midwit?
It's the bell
So,
curve where the people on the dumb side are protected by superstition and fear, so they end up being correct about stuff. And then you have the really smart people on the other side who can think all these things out and then come to the right conclusion. And you have the midwits in the middle who think they know better. They have enough dumb people around them. They're like, I'm smarter than them, so they think they're way smarter than they actually are.
yeah, it's also worth noting that the super genius who is like pondering the void all day, and then like the guy kind of drooling on his shirt a little bit, are both Christians or
Yeah.
religious. So they have some semblance of the totality, and they understand that philosophy is often described as the handmaiden of theology. And the midwit goes, I don't need theology, I have science and philosophy.
Well, they won't even now say that they have philosophy. They'll say
That's true.
they just have
Right.
science. And like you'll have Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, we don't do philosophy anymore. We don't do metaphysics because they know they can't with their materialist groundwork.
So
navigate any of that.
the definitive
Yeah.
midwit wields like scholasticism as a weapon against all of these things that they think are retarded.
Right.
But ultimately, they fall right in the middle of the bell curve where they think they're smarter than the average bear, because they've read studies or because they have a college degree or whatever, and so they're resting on that. When in reality, the people who are much lower IQ than them or dumber than them, and the people who are much actually smarter than them typically agree and land in the same conclusion from different pathways, and the midwit stands alone against both, but doesn't realize how dumb they actually are. They think
So
they're
if you
much
listen
smarter than
to
they
a
are.
lot of debates between like evolutionists and Christians or Christians and atheists, you'll hear the Christian asking like very basic seventh grade level questions that a person on the low IQ spectrum would end up asking, like, okay, tell me how that happens. How does that make sense? They ask like very basic questions. And the midwit thinks that you're being pedantic. Oh, you're being a Phil bro. You're like, we don't need to know how that we have these things. These things just work. They can't actually answer those basic questions. Or they feel like it's antagonistic. They call you a pre-supper if you're asking just basic epistemology. How do you know what you know?
And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with being in the middle of the bell curve, intelligence wise or whatever. What's bad is being in the middle of the bell curve but insisting that you're at the top, or
Right.
thinking that
Dunning-Kruger.
you're smarter than you are, or really having that sort of it's more of an attitude thing than anything, but it's a very quick and efficient label to slap on somebody who thinks that everybody else is retarded when and they just believe the science or something like that, but they don't have the depth of thought, or haven't, at least maybe the capacity is there, but they haven't followed it to its natural ends, like they haven't boiled everything
Yeah.
down to its conclusions.
A
One
lot
or
of
the
people
other.
confuse pride, yeah, and a lot of people confuse intelligence with a desire for the knowledge. So I was just talking with a friend of mine who was kind of complaining that, like, he's like, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but my parents have like absolutely no desire for knowledge, so I don't understand where my intelligence came from. It's like, well, first off, your parents are boomers, and you're confusing a desire or thirst for knowledge with the ability to learn, and they are separate.
And so the person
I got a question.
with a deep desire for knowledge might read a lot of books and still be a midwit, and it
Yes.
doesn't necessarily equate to intelligence one way or the other. Whether or not they seek the knowledge doesn't really matter.
So let me ask what we're all thinking, all five of us, and all of our viewers. If an e-thought can be considered like a thirst trap, what would be the equivalent for a person who thirsts for knowledge? Neil deGrasse Tyson, the Black Science Man?
I mean, it depends on their metaphysics, I think. Like if you have
The direction
naive,
they're going.
yeah, if you have like a naive
Uh-huh.
empiricist, like asking metaphysical questions to them, they're not interested in those deeper questions. So they get stuck in their self-referential system and aren't actually seeking knowledge outside of that. So I think it
And they get
depends
thirst
on
trapped?
the worldview that's happening.
Yeah. What does Alabanza think? I'm dying to know.
I was just thinking, I was just questioning more so, what is the etymology of mid-wit? Witty. I thought witty, but I don't think that's it. But yeah, I'm following you guys. Someone who's kind of positions themselves as if they're hovering above those two others. And I think of I work with a lot of tree people, and it gets really simple. It's you go and you cut that piece of wood over there, and that's it. You put that log over there. And
when you say tree people, I hope it's what I'm imagining.
That's funny, actually. Yeah, my son showed me this little cartoon he's watching, laughing tree people. Yeah, just cutting trees. It just gets really, really, really simple. So
I think
yeah, what is
the
midwit?
soul-
What's the etymology? Do you guys know?
Well, the brevity is the soul of wit. So I think the low IQ and the high IQ know how to say things simply and precisely. where the midwit is the actually, and they write a huge novel about something that's just like it's almost like the amount of words is there to obscure the fact they don't know what they're saying.
But even then, that's
Agreed.
just an example. That's just an energy of the thing. That's not necessarily the essence of the thing. I think the
Yeah,
essence
because
of
some
the
really
thing is
smart people are super autistic about it, and they're just
So-
going to explain it in autistic detail.
Yeah, so my take was agreed. Colin's take was, well, you see, it's from the essence, essentially, that the essence of the matter. So which
Yeah.
one of us has the higher IQ?
Well,
Alabanza,
I'd
real
probably
quick.
say go on.
I was just gonna say it is what it sounds like. Middle IQ, wit being just intelligence synonymously. Because when you said the word witty, like a person's being witty, like they have good banter, is so because they're smart and they're quick witted. So a midwit is just a person who's not it. It's like the lukewarm that will be spewed out of the mouth of society. The low IQ is a fun dude, very attractive to women because he's constantly inadvertently retard maxing, and the super high IQ is going to be solving all of the world's engineering problems and building rockets and such. But the midwit has a specific trap that the world is waiting to entice him into, which is to
Yeah.
think that he's the smartest guy around.
So I think that's
And
to put it to bed. I think that the main identifying thing is that they are in the middle. They're not retarded. They're not whatever. They're in the middle, but they think that they're much smarter than they are, and
That's the pride.
that's about it. Um,
That's what a midwit is.
All right, so let's move on to the actual topic here, philosophy. We started a second ago while my mic was muted, but Westford, go ahead and get us the basics of philosophy because that's I did take one philosophy class. I took a philosophy 101, but I don't remember a lot. I remember a handful of fallacies, but go ahead and give us the basics. You talked about three branches.
Yeah, so there's metaphysics, ethics, and epistemology. Metaphysics is like what is the ontology of things, how what is the essence of things. Epistemology is how do you know what you know. Ethics is there's different types of ethics, but it's essentially like right and wrong,
Whether
you could
it's
say,
right or wrong.
in a very low resolution. And you can start at any one of those as like the starting framework of the philosophy. And I think everybody has philosophy. You have like this agnostic view that, or like even atheists say like, I don't have a worldview, or I haven't made a decision on what I believe about this. I think even if you're not cognizant of your own philosophy, you do have one, and it's going to inform those decisions, even if you say you don't have a position. I think that for the the normal person having enough philosophy to navigate things. So I think of philosophy simply as like ordered thought, ordered thinking. Like if you have a couple fallacies that you can recognize, I think even that's just enough to get you by because a lot of it is people aren't taught philosophy, so they're able to be swayed by really bad reasoning. And that's could be the appeal to authority. It could be whatever fallacy.
It
Thank you.
seems like it's a it seems like it's a structured system to apply logic, like a structured system with
Can I
which
say
you
what
can
I
apply
think you guys
logic.
are missing? And I don't mean to be the big brain guy, but when I read the philosophy, I'm not the guy who took the course and followed it in a disciplined way, but all the philosophy that I've encountered in a way that meant something to me was about meaning and was about the why. And it normally comes from a place of angst. So, I always forget your name on here, Phileas. Enter Citadel, and I have discussed in the past the work of Albert Camus, who's perhaps, I don't mean to sound more well-read than I am. He may be the only guy that I've read that wrote like novels to explore philosophy. But they were all, the only one that I read was The Stranger, and it was about this guy living this absurd nightmare scenario where he was being prosecuted for something that he did. I don't want to spoil it. And meanwhile, the other characters are starting to like question whether or not he is guilty based on how he treated his mother while she was alive, which had no bearing at all on the crime at hand, and it was this whole thing of like, well, should I feel guilty, or am I guilty because I don't have compassion, or does that have any bearing on whether or not I'm guilty of what I'm accused of? And then it's also like it's implicit in the book is this idea of like, why is this happening to me? Is there a rhyme or reason? Is there a God behind things who is like doing things for my good, or it all has some like big finale at the end where it was all for a purpose? Or does man create his purpose and all those things? Those questions that are more like of the heart rather than of the mind and of logic and order and like categorizing uh, how we think and what makes 1 + 1 = 2. That's like one half of it. But when I hear the word philosophy, I think more like, no, these are the big questions of like
Yep.
the human spirit and what its aim is, and whether we're deceived by ourselves or whether our brains concoct uh, a false meaning to drive us for like evolutionary purposes, which I don't believe.
Yeah, I would
but
say that's
that's
part of like the metaphysics. That's like anthropology. What is a human? What is a person?
yeah.
And
And
you get
beyond
into
that,
all
like
those.
why does matter exist? Why does time and space exist? And what is man's role? But like, why anything? That seems to be at the bullseye center of philosophy. Not so much like, well, can you prove to me that your premise actually stands on its own or something like that? You
It's
know
just
what I mean?
different branches because the
Those are the-
epistemology is the how would you know? Like if you're saying humans are just biological machines, there's no free will, then you bring in epistemology. How do you know that? You'd be asking the deeper questions about that claim.
Yeah, and I could see that being what we alluded to earlier, which is like the study of philosophy and the pursuit of philosophy and people arguing it out in the marketplace of ideas couldn't happen without us first establishing epistemology. Like, how do we know and how can we even have a conversation? But it's really just a means to an end for eventually answering the questions themselves, which pertain to like, why do I feel like blowing my brains out? Or why do I feel like there's got to be more to life? And you see that in all the pop songs. The pop songs of like, there's got to be more than this life of being a celebrity. Speak more to the true philosophy than I think a person who has studied rhetoric and debate for 20 years straight. The
Mm.
pop star gets it, and like the meaning and the purpose and the good in philosophy more than the Professor Egghead. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Am I
No,
wrong?
I think you're right. I mean, obviously, there's a difference between rhetoric and logic. You can use rhetoric without logic. Rhetoric is just like the ability to speak and be persuasive, and not like rhetoric is bad, but I think rhetoric without logic is dangerous. People use that in order to sway people to their fallacies.
So
Yeah,
but,
that's just philosophy. It's called sophistry.
Yeah, sophistry.
so that
So
that's what I was
what you're
just-
talking about is telos. That the goal in mind, like what is life? Why are we here? I know there's got to be more. That's all about what is the purpose of life? Why are we here?
So to speak on sophistry, I was just about to say that is picture a context in which, let's say it's a debate, because that's a good framework, but two guys debating in front of an audience. If they're just debating each other, they're ostensibly they're trying to convince each other. They're trying to persuade each other with the tools that they have in the philosophy toolkit, logic, and if A plus B = C, then yada yada yada. But the sophistry thing can happen where what if your audience is all like, you have to assume that your audience is kind of retarded as well. But if the audience is easily swayed by sophistry, and the better rhetorician with zero logic is just making compelling points, and they're convincing the audience totally, they might win the debate. But in the cosmic law book of everything, when it's all said and done, it's like, oh, actually, this person won the debate, but they were totally wrong, and the other person had the logic and found the truth because of logic and philosophy and all this kind of stuff. That's a wild way, like, that's a thing that can happen. And so there's this whole other area of like public debate, which I was just watching Jay talk about this today. Jay Dyer, friend of the show, and that's what he was saying, is it's kind of a fine line, because you really, all of his debates against randos online who will be coming at him with like sola scriptura or whatever sort of angle, and he can and does decimate them, and yet they don't understand how they're losing. They don't even understand the groundwork, the framework, the rules, the how it works, and so they get caught in this endless loop of retardation. And there's probably people who agree with that person and not Jay, and they think Jay is just using fancy words to bludgeon him over the head with whatever. And it's like, bro, Jay as a public debater kind of has to keep that in mind as well, where it's like, you could take this route and totally destroy his argument, but you have to understand that most people are not familiar enough with this route to even glean any wisdom from it. So he has to play this game of like finding a way to back them, to have them back themselves into a corner and admit defeat, which never happens. But it's kind of like, you could see it as an exercise in futility, or you could see it as, well, hey, he's fighting the good fight, and like the reward will be sometime in the end, whenever. It's like he may or may not have convinced anyone, but he was 100% right. How do we feel about that, Wes and everybody?
Yeah, I mean, you can have a correct position. Like you could have an Orthodox Christian perspective and be arguing against like a Protestant. And I would say objectively, the Orthodox position is correct, and the Protestant one you can demonstrate to be incorrect. But you can have the Orthodox person be using fallacies and really terrible arguments, and they can lose the debate. I mean, I see it happen quite often where somebody just doesn't really know how to answer objections or something like that. And what did
I
you
think
ask?
really, Colin was asking how we feel about Jay doing really good arguments, but the
Oh
person's
yeah,
really slippery
they
and
just don't.
weasels away from it, and you see him get
Well, yeah,
frustrated or whatever.
I mean, it could be that they are intentionally weaselly, or that they just don't. Because I think if everyone was just perfectly logical, we'd all come to the same conclusions. And if you explained a fallacy to somebody, they would just go, oh, okay. But it goes back to anthropology of what is a person, what is a human being. And I mean, you might have to hear the same argument 30 times for it to start to break through, because uh, getting pushed back to what you are convinced of is true, and all your presuppositions, you don't question them, you don't know how to question them. You're not going to be seeing the problem clearly. You have these human elements that are in the way. So that's why you shouldn't throw your pearls to swine if you see somebody's not open to the logic.
And it's not only, it seems that it's not only like, I've always kind of intuited that the reason I don't know, it might not only be just to not frustrate yourself, because like, yes, you're wasting energy, you're wasting breath. We've all probably been in a situation where you know the truth and you're trying to communicate it. Truly, your intentions are good, and yet the act of going through the rigmarole is depleting yourself, and maybe even the relationship and the other person. And so it's like, the pearls to swine thing is like a defense. That's defending your inner peace and theirs and the relationship. So you have to kind of keep these things in mind at the same time. It's very difficult. It's extremely difficult.
Well, I think you just have to have so many go arounds. Whenever you encounter people who have been in the faith, since we're talking about orthodoxy and Orthodox apologetics and things like that, you encounter people who've been in the faith a long time, and you kind of see that they don't have that same like kill instinct. Like, I'm going to find the place where I can make the perfect argument, and then the scales will fall from their eyes because they won't be able to escape the logic. You can see that a person who's been around long enough doesn't have that, or that it's few and far between. Now, Jay might be an exception because he's devoting his career specifically to that for people who are a willing audience.
Right.
I don't know which saint. I always get my saint quotes misattributed, or I can't attribute them. But whichever saint in the church said, to one who does not know the truth, don't bother. To one who's eager to know the truth, be open and generous with him. And I can't remember who it was. Maybe Saint Seraphim of Sarov or someone. That's probably wrong. It was a shot in the dark. But it really does come down to like your question of why. It's like, if things are from the heart, and Wes mentioned the human element. The human element really is everything. For us, we might have a bias, I think, because our entry, and I don't think Alabanza's the same, because he was giving his story last week to me and you, Colin, about how he found his way into the faith, and I think it's awesome. And I think we should hear from him. But like for us, we're like we just had to have someone come and knock down our logical framework and erode the foundation of our entire reason for holding the faith that we had. And then once that happened, once people knocked down our infrastructure for being Protestants, we were like, holy cow, this can't stand. I need to find the level ground again. And then lo and behold, it is steady 2,000-year-old rock solid level ground, and then we can build on that. And then after the fact, we learn all the beauty and the goodness and all the human element and all the life of the church, and we're like surprised. It's like a joyful surprise to find out. But I think the vast majority of people, rightly so, I think we're the ones with the disease of like maybe we're too far in the head. Another person, they just need to experience it once. They just need to be like, wow, God was in that, or I felt God's grace in this experience or by way of this person, and that's how I knew the truth, because the truth doesn't consist in a series or a network of intellectual propositions. It consists in the authentic experience of Christ.
So think
I get
about
what you're
also
saying, but I could push back on. It depends on the setting. So, like, if you were in a debate and you gave that argument for why the other person should believe in orthodoxy, it'd be pretty easy to defeat because it could turn into like
Well,
a
that's not even an
relativistic.
argument.
I'm not. Yeah, yeah, but and
Yeah.
I agree with what you were saying.
I'm
You
saying
come
I
to
wasn't
the
gonna
faith through
pers-
icons. You can, the like Saint Theophan the Recluse talks about like the three seats of the tripart of your soul. There's the carnal man, the intellectual man, and the spiritual man, and each man gets to pick which seat he places the crown in his soul. So you have like the carnal person who's obsessed with sensory experience and all that, eating or whatever it is. You have the intellectual man who's stuck in here trying to rational things out, and you have the spiritual man who follows Christ, and everything gets ordered from there. So he says the goal of our Christian life is to place the crown on the spiritual man and follow Christ, and everything else will be ordered. But whenever you put it on these lower parts of your soul, things get disordered because the carnal and the intellectual are not meant to have the crown. But
Andrew.
what I was saying, like in a debate, it's like saying I came to it through the beauty or the experience. Like that'd be like the same kind of claim as like a Mormon is like, oh, I read the Book of Mormon, I asked, is this true? And I felt the burning in my bosom. So that's what I'm saying. The
I totally agree.
epistemology of like, how do you know what you know, is important.
I was just mostly saying, not that it's an argument, like we should be arguing from the heart, or we should be convincing people by saying, "Oh, it's gonna feel really good," or my beautiful experience was this and that. What I'm mostly saying is a person can argue their way out of or into anything. Like I look at people like what was that kid that was like trying out? He was investigating the Orthodox Church for like months and months and months on end. And it's like he's gonna convert, and he never did. Maybe this is a story as old as time lately, but and they're all over the place on YouTube, and it's always these fence setters and stuff. But it's like I'm not gonna pretend like Dr. Gavin Ortland just hasn't read enough of the Church Fathers. If only he
Right.
could see, then he
Or
would open
Jordan
his eyes.
Peterson, who's gone to Mount Athos.
They're either disingenuous or it literally is a matter of the heart, and that I'm the one who's not giving enough credit to the fact that like people can see the same set of facts through a different lens. So the change really does happen in a mysterious place. That's not just well we both have intellectually grounded, uh, emotionally detached male brains, and we're looking at the same set of facts. Therefore, if I leverage them against you, you will be forced to become orthodox.
Right.
I've
Well,
just
that's
seen
why I
it
think
not
that
happen that way
when
too many times.
when you give somebody a logical argument, or you show the flaw in their own argument, and they are unwilling to see it, like if you talk to an atheist or somebody who says, like Will Manuel in the chat said, if somebody says there's no such thing as absolute truth, and you go, well, that is an absolute truth claim. If that's true, then it can't be true. It's self-defeating, and they still like go against you. You go, okay, well, this isn't an intellectual issue. This is a spiritual issue.
So think about the condition of a man's heart, and think about how the parable of the sower, and how all of the seeds were truth, and some of the seeds fell on rocks, and some of the seeds fell on the path, and the birds ate them up, and all of these different ways. And then the seeds that fell on the fertile soil grew and took deep root and became fruitful. Who when it's just me versus another person, versus I'm trying to tell them or communicate to them the thing, I'm giving them seeds, and you can't determine how fertile the soil is in somebody's heart to receive the seeds. But the best way for you to make their heart more fertile soil is to live the light, is to live a good example, is to be loving and to be forgiving, and to, even if it takes your entire lifetime of example of you're just trying your best and approaching them with humility and a humble and loving heart, truly trying to serve them and love them for them, rather than trying some ulterior motive of getting them to be convinced by your arguments. Like, that this is why the Lord brings people to their knees. This is why the Lord allows for tragedy to happen in somebody's life. It's because there really are not very many things that are better. There's really nothing better to fertilize a person's heart and make them ready to receive than to knock down their towers and their life structure, the things that they were putting themselves up on, whether they knew it or not. And so I think it comes down to, it's not to say that there's no benefit in the debates and philosophy or whatever. I think it is a benefit to teach people how to think, or to at least give them the lead that they can follow to learn more about philosophy for their own whatever. But in your regular relational life with your family and friends, your only job is to almost be like is to be the gardener, or to be the guy who's going out and finding rocks and getting them out of the garden, and or to like lift a heavy burden for that person to maybe soften their heart, or to whatever, and the rest of the job is the Lord's, to like soften their heart, or to do what he will to make their heart ready to receive whatever seeds you may be giving. And so it's really, really interesting to think about, because how many of us, every single one of us probably has argued with someone um, from a standpoint of, I know that it's right, and now I just have to prove it. And if you just are willing to receive, or if I can just say the right words, you're going to be ready to receive it. It's just simply not true, and you're going to be effectively putting more rocks in that person's fertile soil, or however the soil is, you're going to be making it worse and less receptive. So I think that's a dangerous game to play. Is it okay? Can I ask if Andrew and or Abba have anything to add to this before we move on to the next kind of subsection?
I have a few things. But if you got some stuff, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I liked where that went, mentioning that philosophy, using it as a tool. And then, I see very frequently, um, new converts, with that kind of burning, you know, wanting to, convince, especially family members, just speaking with family members, wanting them to see the truth, and using philosophy or words to convince them. And then I'm sure you guys probably know how that feels, but you you think in your you think you're is, oh, this is super solid truth that you should obviously know this. And then, yeah, like Justin said, it's like, no, that has to do with something in the heart. I mean, they could know, they could have all of the words, all the knowledge there, and they're just not seeing it. So um yeah, my thing, especially like my grandfather's Protestant of 50 years, Presbyterian. And uh, I spoke with him about it, and he was, bugging me about, what's salvation and the baptism. And first, I don't have, I'm not ready to get into a debate. But when I tried to share with him, you know, what basically why he's wrong and why orthodoxy is right, it just didn't go over well. So I will say orthodoxy just kind of shut me up more than anything. I used to midwit maxing, thinking I knew a lot about things of, I was, living a more of a messianic, uh kind of through the Hebrew roots era, and reading a lot of scripture, and I had things memorized and I could recite and all the things. But yeah, I was definitely midwit maxing for some time, and maybe I still have some inclination towards the midwit max. Uh, but I will say the fruit of orthodoxy in my own life and what I've seen is it's really just shut me up. And my relationship with my grandfather has been drastically changed because of that. Just me just sitting back and yeah, I'm not even gonna try, you know. Same with my uncle. So, um, but I really, it warms my heart. I see it often in the church, the parish, with some parishioners there. They're like the strong drive, I want my mom to come to church. I want my dad to come to church, and to use um philosophy as a tool to try and convince, but ultimately, uh yeah, it's a matter of the heart.
Yeah, and I think
So
it has to come with a sobriety. Like my, like if it's like they're debating me or coming on, like how do you know this that? Like I can come up with the answers, but like if it's just somebody I've known for years and you know I hear them say something, maybe I'll like gently throw a question in that's not really combative, just trying to get them to lead to a more of a conclusion, or it's much more gentle and yeah, like non-combative, right?
mm,
And the one thing that I wanted to add is if you go back to like the roots of philosophy, like the ancient Greece, um, it was always kind of an interior pursuit. So if you read like even Marcus Aurelius and the great philosophy practitioners of old, Diogenes, uh,
Barrel man.
yeah, I love Diogenes, man. He's the guy is hilarious. Um, but the people who lived their philosophy and had it more as a lifestyle rather than just as like an intellectual, hear how smart I am kind of thing. Socrates never wrote anything down. It was all through Plato's dialogues that we hear him speak. And all their engagement was with other philosophers. So your average person off the street isn't going to be equipped to have a, presuppositional, epistemological conversation about why they believe what they believe. And philosophy has historically been viewed as an elite pursuit, an elite practice. And even today, like everyone who goes through college, they might take like a philosophy course, maybe two as an elective if they really like the first one. But with that, you're really just getting like a basic foundation. Like you might get the history of philosophy, like walking through it from, the pre-Socratics through to the postmodernists. But it's like a 30,000-foot view.
So let's move on
And
to. Oh, sorry. I was, I
oh,
was
you're good. I was just going to say that philosophy is definitely better as a tool of interior examination of your own beliefs and practices and where you're falling short in your own life. And it helps you kind of shift through the BS other people are giving you that might divert you from your own course.
so that's what I was gonna say is as it's a the next kind of topic point would be how in the name of why does it matter and like some practical examples and stuff, how to practice it, how to learn it, why to learn it for as an individual. You can think of it just we've kind of covered the external. How can I use this as a tool against or for other people outwardly? But I think it's probably best as a tool, as a filter for what's coming in, and so it can become like a it's your method, it's your protection, it's your defense mechanism to keep yourself from being swayed by sophistry, or to keep yourself from being swayed by bad arguments, or to keep yourself kind of wary of if you're watching a movie, you can kind of view it and enjoy it or whatever, but ideally you're able to run it through a filter of what is the message that they're sending, what are they trying to imply, whether it's by the framing of something or whether it's very explicit. What's the message, and does it pass the test, the sniff test? And I think philosophy is like as an individual, it's a powerful tool, and that is motivation enough to go out of your way to learn it, to learn more, to learn the fallacies, because somebody might actually submit you. If we're talking about analogies here, like jujitsu, somebody who knows how to do this or that hold or a scissor sweep or to get you into a certain position to leverage something on you. If you're unprepared and you're unskilled, it might be the easiest thing in the world to get out of, but you're not equipped. You don't know. And so they'll hold you down in this like schoolyard like bully headlock, and you're just completely incapacitated. When if only you had done a month of jujitsu or whatever, you would know that all you have to do is move this way and get out of this headlock instantly, and then you can take their back and all of that. And so there's definitely a reason to learn. So Westford and or Andrew, what do you think of the best, most efficient, quickest, easiest, most palatable ways to consume and learn and practice philosophy? I guess my first instinct is just watch videos, right? Right? Watch what's the dude's name? Rattlesnake Jake the Rattlesnake. Jake the Snake. Is it Rattlesnake Jake?
Yeah, Jake Rattlesnake.
Jake Rattlesnake. What he does is he'll take other people's debates, a lot of Jay Dyer, a lot of Andrew Wilson, and he'll just break it down. And he'll play the video and let them make an argument, and then he'll pause and say, here's what he's doing. Here's what the other person said, and here's why it's a straw man, and here's this fallacy and why it matters, and here's what Andrew is doing to combat that. He weaves this in and takes this approach in order to get to this whatever. I think that's a great way to learn. So Jake Rattlesnake, and what other ways, practical ways, can we kind of adopt philosophy in our own lives to make it so that we have that filter, and if necessary, have a way to combat the opponent in an appropriate way, assuming we're trying the best to like focus on the fertile soil, all the stuff we just talked about for the relational aspect.
Well, I think, Andrew Wilson, Jim Bob, Jay Dyer, these people are really great resources, and some of them actually have like philosophy 101 courses. And I think I think that's not a high time cost to entry is those people. And a lot of the barrier to entry is like understanding basic philosophy terms like ontology, epistemology, telos. A lot of people come in and they don't really understand what he's saying because they don't understand those words. That's just like shorthand for saying like epistemology is how do you know what you know. It's a lot easier to say epistemology than have to explain it every time you use it. I think like the chud version of like what you're talking about with jujitsu or chess, being able to defend yourself from bad reasoning is like even as simple as like 4 out of 5 doctors say that this toothpaste is the best. You're like, well, that's appeal to authority. Just because they agree doesn't mean that it's true, right? You'll see that with morality. Oh, we can just agree that killing somebody's wrong, right? Well, because we agree on it doesn't mean it's wrong. Because what if you and I disagreed on it? Let's just grant that we disagree killing people's wrong. Does that mean it's not wrong anymore?
Yeah. So I think the only other bullet point I had here, I think we pretty much covered earlier with the midwit talk and with the beating people over the head with arguments and facts and logic or whatever, is where autism tends to interfere with the goal of persuasion. And so if your goal as an individual speaking to another person is to win, you may win, but I think that's a pretty shallow and short-sighted goal, because you're not actually affecting anything. You're not causing change in their lives. And preferably, I mean, you can argue, you can use philosophy and logic and the system to faithfully debate and try to persuade someone that they should be not taking fish oil tablets, or to start drinking more orange juice or whatever, for any reasons that they might be like, well, wait a second, sugar is bad. And then you can kind of walk them through and handhold them through and say, listen, if you actually look at these studies, they've used this tactic, and I'm telling you that that's wrong, so listen to this. That's like a normal way. And you still want them to be receptive, but when you're talking about much maybe more important stuff, if you want to think about it that way, when it comes to their eternal soul and where that ends up, and more so just how they're living their life, I think it becomes a lot more important to take into account all of the things that we've talked about, and not just be in it to win autistically, because that is
Right.
the word you were missing, Abba, is zeal. All of these fresh converts have this fire in them, this zeal. They're zealots for the thing that they've found, and it's for right or for wrong. I mean, it's like they've got a good intention to bring people into what they've found because what they've found is true and good, but their motivation might be more of the autistic variety, where they're just trying to win because they're autistic and they know that it's real, and they have to figure out how to convince everybody. When I think part of the natural process is graduating from that into the just shut up, just shut up and
Right.
and
Well,
like
I think the
be a
zeal needs to be
person.
paired with peace and sobriety, because I think you don't want to lose the zeal, lose that passion, and be like lukewarm. But the zeal without peace, that's when you get like the manic. I have to autistically show them the truth. When I think about like, how did you discover orthodoxy? It was either somebody invited you, you saw something on the internet, you wrestled with it, you heard arguments for like a year, and then you converted, and now you had your more genuine candid experience of it, and now you're coming to your grandma and and now her experience is my son's now a weirdo trying to debate me and I'm making cookies. So it's a totally different experience from her side.
I,
And I
I
think with the philosophy stuff, like if you can learn how to listen, that will that'll take you miles, because often you'll hear the fallacy or what's wrong if you just listen to them, listen to what they're saying. Because one thing I've discovered is when I'm talking to people, like I see an issue in something, I try to describe it, and they have another issue about the topic that they are like latched on. They can't actually like listen to what I'm saying about it. They're like, no, the problem's this. I'm like, I'm not saying that's not a problem, but you see it like from this way too. But they're not listening. What were you gonna say, Andrew?
I want to read a Marcus Aurelius quote that kind of brings it down to earth. Obviously, Marcus Aurelius was not a Christian and not Orthodox, but it kind of gets to the heart of the philosophical life and what philosophy aimed to be in the beginning, and also how it kind of intertwines with the handmaiden of theology here. So he writes in Meditations, he says, when you wake up in the morning, and he's talking to himself here, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood and birth, but the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in the ugliness, nor can I feel angry at my relative or hate him. We were born to work together, like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. To obstruct each other is unnatural. To feel anger at someone, to turn your back on him, these are unnatural. And it kind of just speaks to that same like the peacefulness with which not every philosophical engagement has to be a presuppositional beatdown of my worldview is more consistent than yours. It can be as simple as this is the truth of Christ and that he has revealed to me, and I'm showing you with my lifestyle. That is still succinct with a philosophical life.
Perfect. Beautiful quote. And who'd you say? Marcus Aurelius? Was he what who is he?
He was an emperor of Rome during the collapse of Rome, famous for stoicism. He fought on the eastern front against the Huns with the Germanic tribes,
Nice.
and he's considered one of the four good emperors
One of the four good emperors, like
of Rome,
good
of mainline Rome.
from what perspective?
Good from the sense that he wasn't a tyrant, only interested in gaining and holding his own power. He was very concerned with the state of the empire, with the state of affairs of the average Roman citizen. But because he lived during the kind of fall of Rome time, he was post Nero. He saw that even he, as emperor, lacked the power necessary to right the ship. And so he found that in Stoicism, he could build within himself this fortress of inner peace, and he could impact the lives of those around him. And it's also worth noting that Stoicism is, at least in the classical sense, it's not like pop Stoicism today, where it's just like, oh, be super chill about everything, dude. It was a religion. Like, they believed in the one essence of the divine, and that you communed with that through living a moral life. And it's very different than Stoicism as we see it today or anything like that. But it is still, I don't know, pertinent to the philosophical life to, I would say, have a decent understanding and kind of like, I don't know, practice of Stoicism with yourself at least.
There's definitely
Andrew, would you
So-
agree that like the church fathers in the Orthodox worldview is kind of a fulfillment of the Stoic pursuit?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you look at the martyrs and the way they embrace and approach their own death.
It was
It's
like
very
a
stoic
nun.
in the sense of like, Marcus Aurelius has a quote that says, if it doesn't destroy my character, then it doesn't destroy me. And that's very much the same, like in the same vein, kind of parallel to what the martyrs would say
I'd say it's like
when approaching their own death.
a nugget of true wisdom that they've gleaned just from living life and having Christ in everything and through everything. People are bound to stumble upon great wisdom here and there. I think that's part of one of those things where it's a whole thing that could be pursued for its own ends, and people often do that. But it apply that also is a tool that you can apply to.
Yeah, it's applied as a tool. And I think one of the major shortcomings of Stoicism is that, especially in the modern lexicon of philosophy, Stoicism is often intertwined with inaction. So you take the Marcus Aurelius approach of, oh, I'm the emperor, the empire is declining, I can't affect the change, so I'm just going to turn inward on myself and focus on living in accordance with my principles. Not to say that you shouldn't live in accordance with your principles, you absolutely should, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take action. I would say that's the one thing that separated the classical Stoics from the church fathers or the Christian martyrs, is that they understood they weren't going to change the course of events today, but by their deaths, it would serve as ultimate testimony by which the church grew. So it wasn't affecting something in the immediate sense, but their action sent ripples through, the culture
Yeah,
that they found themselves in, and it was able to affect ultimate change.
a lot more impactful that way. I think that's a great place to wrap. I know a couple of us, myself included, have a hard cutoff at 7:30, and it's now 7:35 Eastern Standard. I want to give everybody a chance for our 3 listeners right now, and anybody who may watch this after the fact, go ahead and plug your stuff. I appreciate everybody who was here from the beginning, working through our technical difficulties. Me and Justin can be found on The White Hodge Twins. If you just type in White Hodge Twins, you're probably just going to find the Hodge Twins account. If you type in The White Hodge Twins, you'll find ours, hopefully. And we're actually going to have a new video posting here in the next couple of days, and it's a lot of fun. Let's go over to Abba. Tell us where people can find you and check out your stuff, because you're hitting it hard.
Yes, Abba Alabanza, ABBA Alabanza, which is praise and ABA Abba Alabanza. And you can find me on the social medias, the YouTubes. I just had to open up, and I've had 6 Instagram accounts and a bunch of TikToks. I keep getting banned from them. And I just opened up another YouTube channel called Abba Alabanza Show. So that's kind of my backup YouTube for now. But yeah, Abba Alabanza, you should be able to find me on all the socials. But I have 5 albums and over 40 singles on all the available to listen on all the streaming platforms. I make reggae music. So yeah, go stream the music. That's really where the, I guess, bread and butter of everything I do. It's just the music, reggae music. So
A couple of fan
uh,
favorites would be, or at least my favorites, obviously Gay Propaganda, and Virtuous Woman. I've been really, oh man, Virtuous Woman and Welcome
cool.
Home are like freaking the whole family album's fantastic. Westford, what do you got?
Hey, my name is Mr. Westford. You can find me over on Mr. Westford on YouTube. Done a lot of different things on there, debate reviews, and uh, lots of. Lately, I have been at my bandwidth, so it's just been interviews. But going to be trying to do some more creative stuff on there soon, so I can actually have something to say when people ask me what I do.
And Andrew.
Yeah, you can find me on primarily Substack at the Inner Citadel. Um, Also, I have a podcast called Golden Ashes. It is on Spotify. Um, some stuff is being moved over to YouTube. Going to start streaming on YouTube soon, and on Instagram at the Inner Citadel. Mostly doing shorts and political philosophy is kind of what I focus on.
Sweet. Yeah, so go follow everybody here. Like I said, Justin and me. And Justin, I think, has a YouTube channel just now about to start called Stupid School, I think. He might change the name, but keep a lookout from that. You can definitely find it if you keep watching EWBSX stuff and or White Hodge Twin stuff. We're all going to keep collaborating pretty consistently as best as we can. And actually, hello listener in the chat, we probably should hop him on at some point as well. I'm not sure what all his what he's
I
well
did.
versed in, but
I actually
definitely.
reviewed one of his videos on my last stream, the I Am a Streamer, but you guys need to go watch that video of his. I've watched it. I showed it to my wife. I mean, I've watched it every day since I've seen it, which is probably the past 5 days. So, I mean, oh man, it's genius. Yeah, go watch that video from Hello Listener. I Am a Streamer. Ah.
Sweet.
Thanks for
Well,
having me on. Gotta swoop out here.
yep,
God
yep.
bless.
And we'll go ahead and wrap it. Thanks everybody for listening. Stay cool. Oh yeah, also massive plug here. Go check out EWBSX. You can go to the website ewbsx.com, ewbsx.com, or .app. Both lead to the same place at this point. Check that out. Download the app. We got new stuff rolling out at some point in the next few months. Hopefully, new website, new app, new way to engage. And so, keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, and enjoy. Mostly, just enjoy the radio station. I think that's it.
You'll catch Hello Listener and Ala Albanza on EWBSX.
So true. All right, thanks, guys.